calling the Clay County Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, February the 14th to order. First order of business, approval of the agenda. We have an additional item on it. The Substance Use Crisis Center bid process approval. We will work that in towards the end of the agenda here. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda as amended.
Move approval with addition.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Campbell, second by Commissioner Kravinoff. Any additional discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Passes. Approval of payments and bills and vouchers.
So move, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Mojo, second by Commissioner Kravinoff. All in favor of the motion indicate by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Wait a second. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just to make sure that we circle back after this vote to citizens to be heard.
Oh, correct. My mistake. We have citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens here to speak on any item that's not on the agenda? Ms. Larson, do we have any citizens?
We do not, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We also want, next item, want to recognize the Comstock Community Center for their generous donation to the work detail. Money that's going to be directed towards work detail supplies. We appreciate their generous donation for a good purpose. Next item on the agenda is an annual department update from Probation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Happy Valentine's Day. I am here to give the annual update for Clay County Probation. I tried to provide some documents for review ahead of time. I think that there were several. Give you an overview of supervision within Clay County. And I just thought I'd take some time as well. I'll try to go quickly, but some of the documentation just will provide some history. I know we have a new commissioner on board, and just to kind of explain the dynamics between the state and the county. There's been a lot of discussion recently about legislature and request for funding for supervision in the community, and I just wanted to outline that Clay County has a contract with the state of Minnesota. We supervise the contract probation office, which covers the gross misdemeanor, and juvenile supervision within the county. And then the state also provides the felony supervision within the county, which includes intensive supervised release individuals as well. Typically, what's in statute is that there should be a 50% bill back to the counties. However, as long as I can recall, the state has not provided enough funding to allow for that, and so counties have been billed back. Most recently, I would say over at least the last 10 years, probably at the 72% bill back to the counties. And so the funding request going forward to legislature is to afford the state the ability to meet that 50% threshold, allowing the counties to pay forward the other 50%. And so I believe that we requested the same thing last year. I think they have not given an increase in, I think 20 years ago, they gave a $600,000 one-time budget increase. So this is huge, but we have a lot of support. The 3 delivery systems have come together and are approaching legislature together, which I believe will make a big difference. So here is a Department of Corrections delivery system, and then there's also a county probation office delivery system that's called CPO. An example of that would be like Traverse County, Wilkin County, Grant, Big Stone, those areas. And then we also have a CCA, which is the Community Corrections Act delivery system. And an example of that would be Tri-County Community Corrections. So it'll be beneficial that all 3 delivery systems have come together to approach legislature, and we're very hopeful that we can add staff, we can add programming, and different amenities within the communities, recognizing the increase of criminal activity as well as chemical addiction, health-related issues that compile or increase criminal activity. So any questions about delivery systems or any of that so far?
Just a comment, Janelle. We are looking at this in the upcoming AMC meeting we've got for legislative issues, and this really is a critical issue. More and more people are subject to community corrections as opposed to incarceration. And one of the things we've got to keep in mind, and we have to pat ourselves on the back on this, is resources within the community are necessary if you're going to have people out in community corrections. And, you know, our work at the substance abuse crisis center that we're building right now, having these resources within the community are going to be necessary just to give Ms. Cheney or people some degree of success in having places to refer folks to. So as we look at various issues, I think the community corrections aspect is a big part of where we need to put our emphasis, and we've done well up to this point. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things that I'd like to highlight is we did have a staffing change that will impact the county budget. Because of increased enhanced felony cases within Clay County, and a decrease in the number of juveniles placed on supervision, I did take a juvenile agent position and moved them to the adult felony caseload. And so that is likely a cost savings of $90,000, given salary and fringes and those kind of things. So I'll continue to look at caseloads. I would highlight that the juvenile agents, although the numbers are down, there is a significant population of juveniles on supervision, and the types of behaviors have definitely increased. We've heard how they've increased at the juvenile center, much more aggressive, violent, a lot of concerning behaviors with our youth in the community, and trying to keep them active in the school setting and participating in those kind of things is really a focus, but difficult. So they continue to work hard, although the numbers are just a little bit down. Adult gross misdemeanors, they continue to maintain about 108 clients on a monthly basis. Many of those individuals are involved in the domestic violence court. So kind of increased contacts and supervision with that and support. We really try to engage those individuals in the domestic violence programming here in Clay County, and avoid any violations. We do have a significant as well number on felony supervision as well, but it's good that we have at least 2 programs in this area that can offer the domestic violence programming. Drug court and veterans court, we saw a change with the overseeing judge as well as the agent. We have approximately 20 active participants. They've tried to get creative moving forward, trying to do different things with incentives, by, and I know most recently, the compliance person as well as the agent had a group meeting, brought them all in for pizza, kind of more of an informal group setting, open dialogue, which was neat, and I think it was well received by all of the participants. We continue to support a pretrial program. I was approached by some of the stakeholders if we would be interested and available to do a pretrial support program. The court was recognizing that they had release conditions that spoke to being randomly tested, making sure that they're in compliance with their release conditions, yet knowing that there wasn't really any entity that was following up on that. And so probation has received several referrals. I think during COVID, it kind of decreased. We had some staffing changes. And so we're building up those referrals currently, but it's shown to be productive. The intent of that program is to really engage individuals to ensure that they can make it to their court appearances, try to help support them remaining clean and sober. So there is random testing. And then just reminders of when their next court date is, making sure that the parties of the court can make contact with them and they can see the process through. Juvenile restitution program, we did have 8 male youth that completed several hours totaling $3,338 to their victims within the community. We do like to continue to support that. Not a lot of counties have a restitution program, so it's nice when victims can receive some reparation for the harm done to them. The fees that are used for that are what are collected from supervision fees for gross misdemeanor and misdemeanor cases. Individuals are assessed $200 per misdemeanor or gross misdemeanor file that they pay forward. We've also used some of those funds for the STS program for incentives, and we've used some of those funds for training, whether it was for our department specifically, or at times we've invited other county staff to some trainings. Sentence to Serve program, we finally got that back up and running. We had tabled it from January until spring. Myself and Cole Stoll from the work detail program had, I think he started in that position about the time that I started going out, and we went out, met the stakeholders in the county, and tried to learn what their needs were, and we were able to hire a STS crew leader in August. And Cole and Andrew Hansen, our STS leader, have been partnering and talking to community members about needs and doing a lot of painting and mowing and all kinds of stuff out there. I will highlight that the contract allows for 25% of our STS program's time to go towards state projects. This year, I know in the spring, I was approached by DNR to do some lake accesses. Although they did want assistance in Becker County, it just doesn't seem time efficient for our crew to be doing that, and so there were some conversations about that, but we did tackle the lake accesses in Clay County, and I can say that the crew members really appreciated that. They're really beautiful sites, areas. There were a couple times that there were some community members there, and they were very thankful that we maintained it. It was a space that they would frequent and appreciated that the debris and things that were left behind by others were picked up, and that the sites were mowed and well cared for. The current STS contract expires in June, the end of June, and so I will come back and approach the board about renewing that contract, and at that time I'll bring the new STS crew leader and introduce him. And I think the final piece is just talking about the legislator request and funding, and I'm not quite sure when we will learn about that, but I know that any funds that are provided will be valuable and well utilized within the community. We look to do many things within the community and have had to get really creative. We've started to do a victim impact panel within the community, and we're utilizing evidence-based tools with it. Really an open dialogue, not just a panel speak and then people leave, but rather some engagement with individuals and really trying to get a dialogue going and continue with those resources. So that's been beneficial. I will highlight that one of the things with the request through legislature is $1.6 million for intervention centers. I have asked that Clay County be on the radar for that. I think that you have an amazing correctional center with amazing programming already. You have the recovery center coming about. I think that the amenities within Clay County would speak well to that. That would be a program where probation would recommend someone, instead of a return to prison, would be recommended to do programming in an intervention center. And then the Department of Corrections would pay for that. There would be a per diem with that, so hoping that it would be a benefit to the county and the state. We recognize that when we have individuals that are not appropriate to be in the community, they're currently not amenable to supervision within the community, and when we return them to a facility, they may not be accessible to programming within that facility. They're not getting their Rule 25s done or their comprehensive assessments. They're not attending sex offender treatment programming. They're not attending anger management. They're not, and so it would be valuable to keep them closer within their communities and be able to complete some valuable programming. The other thing that I would like to highlight, the state, the Department of Corrections, decided within the last month not to assess supervision fees to felony level cases. That had been at $300 per case. If they were not paid, they went through revenue recapture, but the state of Minnesota decided that, many of the people that are justice involved don't have the financial means. They have other programming that they need to pay for, and so they've decided to table any collection of supervision fees. I don't know where that stands with gross misdemeanor cases. A lot of the CPO agencies and CCA agencies, that's part of their revenue. And so I don't know what decision, if any, would be made pertaining to that level of supervision. I do recognize that we utilize those supervision fees in a very valuable way within this community towards incentives for the drug court participants. It goes directly back to them. They've gotten incentives to Starbucks, to Herberts and Gerberts in the community, different things. So it's nice that we have that resource to do incentives. The other thing that I would like to offer is if anybody wished to do a ride-along with our supervision agents, doing some home visits, you're more than welcome. Just reach out to me and I can look to connect you with an agent that would be doing some home visits and making contacts out there.
Any questions?
If I may. Sure. I'll just make, sorry, go ahead. Okay. Thank you for especially pointing out, just, we'd met once before, but having your update, it was just, you gave a lot of clarity. Commend you for all your work. Boy, talk about demand, but yet it appears that the work you do has meaningful purpose. That's really making, I feel, very good, productive way of changes. Again, trying to enter these people back in into society in a really positive way. And I just thank you very much. I will look forward to reaching out to you for a ride along at some point. I think that would be very educational.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I just want to let Ms. Cheney know the efforts that you and your team go through not only benefits the community and public safety, but it benefits the individuals greatly. We have a system where recidivism, the reoccurrence of crime with people, it's always going to be a problem, but it's lower here than in most states. And that is due both to the opportunities that are offered to people and the consequences that are offered to people. And your folks do a good job of finding a balance. And I look forward to us hopefully getting the legislature to come up with a consistent funding formula and get things keep them moving in the right direction. But really appreciate your efforts. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we've got Ms. Larson. Would you want to cover this? We're still 9 minutes out on our public meeting.
Go ahead and do the agenda addition.
Yes, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Today is another exciting step in the process. It's hard to believe, but looking back, it's been about 1 year since this board's vision and leadership took action into the bidding process for our architects. We've spent a significant amount of time over the last year planning what this facility should look like. On January 17th, we received an update from Klein McCarthy and Gertz Construction in regards to their plan forward with the project. Today is the day where we'll be requesting to submit bids or request for bids in this project. And so with that, I would yield for any questions of the commission.
Any questions? Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. No questions. I just, there are times when it's really exciting to be in this capacity serving, and I feel like this is a really large step for this board to take to help address some of the substance use crisis issues that are happening in our community. So I am just really grateful for the work that is taken for us to get to this point. This is not a glamorous facility by any means, but certainly will benefit people greatly. So I am really excited for this action today.
Commissioner Campbell.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we move forward with Klein McCarthy and Gertz Construction to request for bids for the substance use facility.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Campbell, second by Commissioner Mojo. Any further discussion?
Probably just a further clarification. I know as we've moved through this process in regards to the grant that we were awarded and hearing comments from our detox director, there will likely be a change in what we're referring this facility to as, similar to us changing the name from the Clay County Jail to the Clay County Correctional Facility. We want to make sure that it's named something that adequately addresses the treatment that's happening there, similar to, it's maybe a withdrawal management facility, but just so this board's aware, they're all the same project. It's just finding the right name to refer it to.
No action on that at this time with this motion. Okay. Any other comments or questions? If not, all in favor of the motion of approval for Klein McCarthy and Gertz Construction to request bids for the substance use crisis facility, as it's known now. All in favor of that motion indicate with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, next on the agenda is public hearing. Consider adoption of text amendment through passage of ordinance 2023-1 to the Clay County Development Code to amend Table 8 5-1, minimum lot area and width standards for lots on recreational development lakes in the Shoreland Residential District.
Mr. Chair, I think you're still 5 minutes early, actually, by the clock. If we can take maybe a quick 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go ahead and break for 5, and we'll open the meeting up at 9. Okay, welcome back. This time I'm going to entertain a motion to open a public hearing to consider adoption of text amendment through passage of ordinance 2023-1 to the Clay County Developmental Code to amend Table 8-5-1, minimum lot areas and width standards for lots on recreational development lakes in the Shoreland Residential District.
Move to open the hearing.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Campbell, second by Commissioner Krabanoff, and we'll open this meeting. Matt Jacobson, if you would take it.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Yes, so this is a petition to amend the text of the Clay County Development Code brought forward by a resident of Clay County, Mr. Greg Anderson. He's looking to modify the text portion in our code for lots in the Shoreland Residential District. So, and from the minimum right now that we have is 200 feet width and 80,000 square feet area to 150 feet and a 40,000 square foot area. So this is for riparian and non-riparian lots. Riparian meaning the lots that are adjoining a public water, whether it be well, in this case, it would be a lake. And then non-riparian would be those within the Shoreland District, which is 1,000 feet, extends 1,000 feet from the ordinary high water level outward. And the Planning Commission heard this at their January 24th meeting, and they're recommending this to you all for approval unanimously. So the petitioner, he's lived on Turtle Lake for several years. He's selling the property. He would like to retain a portion of a non-riparian lot for his future use. He also believes that the standards on lakes shared with Becker County should be consistent to create parity. So this would really impact 2 lakes in our county, and I'll get to that in just a second. From our comprehensive plan, we do have a goal to protect and enhance the health and vitality of Clay County surface waters, including lakes, rivers, and streams for the benefit and enjoyment of Clay County residents and visitors. There's an objective under that that is relevant to this request, which would be continuing to enforce shoreland regulations on Clay County lakes, rivers, and streams. So in our current code, this is Table 8-5-1, shows the dimensional standards. If you look at what I have kind of outlined in red there, that is our residential district. The minimum lot area is 80,000 square feet. The minimum lot width is 200 feet. And below that, there's a table. This is from the Minnesota State Shoreland Management Rules. And for a single unsewered lot, we don't really have any duplex or triplex or quad lots in Clay County. We do have singles. The minimum standards for a recreational development lake for a riparian lot is 40,000 square feet, 150 feet minimum lot width, and then non-riparian is the same. So this request would be to basically match the minimum standards that are, I guess, required from the Minnesota Shoreland Management Rules. And just to give you a little bit of a background on lake classification, there are 3 different types of lakes in Minnesota that are classified by the DNR. There's natural environment. They're usually smaller lakes. They have limited development. They're shallow. There's really limited use for residential or recreational use on these types of lakes due to a variety of environmental conditions. Most of the lakes in Clay County are natural environment lakes. Then we have recreational development lakes. So they're a little bit bigger, a little bit deeper, a little better fishery. They can support more development just due to their size. We have two, well, technically, I guess we'd probably have, well, we have two of these lakes, but really they're shared with Becker County. So if you put them together, we have one, but yeah, we have two, Sand Lake and Turtle Lake. And so we share these with Becker County. The Becker County lot dimensional standards is that 40,000 square feet and 150-foot width. So theirs matches the Minnesota rules, essentially. And then general development lake, this is like your Mille Lacs Lake, your Ottertail Lake, much larger, much deeper. They can support a lot more recreation. And then you have multiple tiers of development. So you might have sea riparian, then you might see more development beyond that and into further out from the lake. So this request would be consistent with Minnesota Shoreland Rule 6120. And as I had stated before, we have two recreational development lakes. Our current area standard is double what's the minimum standard is. I think that was, my guess is that was done just because we don't have a lot of, we have two recreational development lakes. Most of ours are natural environment. And so 80,000 square feet, which is our current standard, is actually the minimum standard for a natural environment lake. So I'm assuming when we did our ordinance, shoreland ordinance, we just said 80,000 square feet for all. And then the lot width would be 33% greater than the state minimum. And as I had mentioned before, Becker counties, they match the minimum state standards. This proposed amendment would impact about 78 parcels. Of those, 49 of those 78 are already below the minimum state standard because they were created before the shoreland rules went into effect. On Turtle Lake especially, a lot of those lots were developed in the 60s and 70s. And so we're looking at, and these minimum standards were adopted in the 90s. And then there's 39 of these do meet or exceed the state minimum standards. And I should say that with the Minnesota Shoreland Management Rules, there's something that is statewide. There's a lot of diversity in our lakes. I mean, if you go to the lakes area, just to the east, it's going to be different from the metro area. It's going to be different from the north central, northeast area. So these are really just kind of like the floor. And counties and municipalities and other local jurisdictions have a lot of flexibility in terms of how they want their shoreland ordinances to look. The DNR just provides these minimum standards as the floor, essentially. And I should say, we have higher standards to protect water resources a lot. Most counties do have much higher standards, maybe not necessarily for lot size or width, but for other provisions in their ordinance. So this would be the proposed change to the code, would be just to add a provision in there for recreational development lakes, that area, minimum area being 40,000 square feet, and then the minimum width being 150 feet. The Planning Commission did go through these criteria and review standards for a zoning district amendment, and they made these following findings, and they made affirmative findings for each. Of these are in your packet. You don't necessarily need to go through these findings because the Planning Commission did, unless you see a reason to, if you'd like to go through the findings. Otherwise, you can just take the Planning Commission recommendation as they have put forward to you. This is just kind of looking at some of the lots. So this is on Turtle Lake. The light blue is the shoreland area. These are lots, you can kind of see lots of our lots on Turtle Lake are substandard, much, much smaller. This is pretty common across the state. There's a few that are larger, that could potentially be subdivided in the future. Some of these honestly are big enough that under our current code, they could be also subdivided as well, so. And then this is Sand Lake. Sand Lake is our other, recreational development lake. So these are lots that are greater than 80,000 square feet. I did not necessarily look at the minimum lot width, just chose to focus on the lot area just because the going from 80,000 square feet to 40,000 is much more kind of the limiting factor than going from a 200-foot lot, minimum lot width to 150. So, and you can see with, especially with this lake, with Sand Lake, look, if you look on the Becker County side, it's not, there's barely any development at all, and same with on the Clay County side, so. Questions for me at all?
Matt, can you, if possible, can you go back to that picture on Turtle?
Yes.
Can you
This
point
one?
out? Yeah, thank you. Can you point out there are two lots that this would affect, right? The one by the petitioner and one other one. I know it all goes in effect for all the lots, but given opportunity.
Oh, where the petitioner would live?
Correct. Can
Yeah,
you
so
point
he
those
would
out where that is?
be right here. These two lots.
Okay. I just thought it was important to see.
Right on the edge there.
Right. Okay, and then the last part, being as part of that meeting, would you just make a comment or two what DNR talked about during that in our meeting, just comments they made, Roger had made?
Yeah, he kind of, I think his take was, that this is something that meets the minimum, the state minimum, so there's no issue. The DNR did provide a conditional letter of approval for this. And I think he had also kind of explained kind of what I had talked about a little bit earlier about, just his thinking of how our current standards were adopted or were developed just through, because we mainly have natural environment lakes in Clay County. And I don't know, am I missing anything or anything you want to?
No, I just wanted to make sure it was just brought up from you. We had that discussion with him. He
Yep.
spoke for quite a bit of time.
Yep.
And just pointed out he just, in his view, didn't see any negative effect on the lake.
No, that's correct. And just jumping off of that point, Commissioner Krabenhoff, there is kind of a process for amending your shoreland ordinance that is in statute, and this is essentially, or in the DNR, in the Minnesota Administrative Rules. And so right now we have gone through step 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're now on step 5. It would be the local governing body adopting the ordinance, and then notifying if you were to adopt this ordinance today, then I would notify the DNR. I would highlight the changes that we are proposing, and then they would send a letter of final approval. So the ordinance wouldn't officially be adopted until we receive that letter. And so, and I think I have that too in the ordinance language here as well, under section 4, effective date. Upon receipt of final approval to the county from the Department of Natural Resources. Yep, so we've made it through almost all the steps. Any other additional questions from me at all?
Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've worked with the applicant Greg Anderson in the past, and I know he's done his homework. I guess my question would be, and I've seen the findings of fact, and I'm just curious, I just want to be sure that in changing these minimum lot sizes, that it would still give ample room for somebody who, when you're dealing with setback requirements for septic systems and those types of things, that amount of 40,000 square feet was still plenty to meet those issues.
Yeah, Commissioner Campbell, that's a great question. Yes, that would continue to give them ample room. The setbacks standards that we have in place actually match the state minimum standards, so, yep, that would give them ample room.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Okay.
Any other questions? I know we have Mr. Anderson online. Do we have any other citizens who want to comment on this? Well, let's bring Mr. Anderson up. Greg?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Oh, all right. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, thanks for the opportunity to speak here. I appreciate what you're doing for me here. Hopefully you'll see that this request I'm making does meet all of the standards the DNR sets forward. Everything is well thought out. It's gotten the approval from the DNR. It has unanimous approval from the Planning Commission. It's consistent with the shoreland rules of the state. And it just brings our extremely large standards in line, not only with the DNR, but with almost every county in this end of the state that has developed the lakeshore standards. Matt talked about the number of parcels that it might impact. I'm not going to spend much time on Sand Lake because Sand Lake really isn't being used as a recreational lake. It's suffered from extremely high water for many years, so a lot of the shoreline is inundated with water. There's also been water quality issues where people weren't able to swim in the lake. There were some blue algae blooms and such. So I don't see this would have much of an impact on Sand Lake unless people wanted to build a home just in a rural setting. On Turtle Lake, it really only impacts 6 or 7 of the non-riparian parcels or the backlots. Only 6 or 7 of those, including mine, would have at least 150 feet or more of frontage where they could be considered an individual lot. And they're on the lakeside, there are only 2 lots that have 40,000 square feet, 150 feet of frontage. That's my lot and the neighbor. There's nothing we could do to change those lots. So we're really looking at only potential for impacting 6 or 7 properties on the lake. And one of the unique things about Turtle Lake, and you mentioned septics earlier, with all of the smaller lots on Turtle, to the north end of the lake on 2 of the larger backlot or non-riparian parcels, we've got 2 community septic systems where the landowners on the lake acquired land across the road, which allowed them then to move their septic further away from the lake, get it across the road, which is a huge improvement for water quality on the lake. In addition to letting me do what I want to do to subdivide my property, this would create a better opportunity should people want to improve their septic systems, get them further from the lake and clear up the lake quality. So hopefully you'll take a look at this and you'll see that it meets all the rules and you'll find it acceptable. And that's pretty much all I have to add. I do want to thank Matt. Matt has done a ton of research on this, a lot more than I would have ever imagined, and that really helped a lot. I was on the Planning Commission when these standards were developed about 17 years ago. And I have to say, we've spent more time talking about these standards now than we ever did back then. And part of that was probably due to the fact that at that time, we were kind of rewriting or going through the entire development code, and we weren't able to focus this much on any one item. So we've really had an opportunity to drill into this one item here. And with that, that's all I have to add. And I thank you for your time.
Any questions for Mr. Anderson?
Mr. Chair, just to piggyback off of Mr. Anderson's comment on the water quality of Sand Lake, I should say that with all the development on Turtle Lake, Turtle Lake does have exceptional water quality, and their water quality their water is tested and monitored, and they don't have any impairments to my knowledge. So,
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Campbell?
Matt, were there any other comments by the public that were part of the public hearing process?
we only received comments from the Department of Natural Resources.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'd move we close the hearing.
Motion to close the hearing by Commissioner Campbell, second by Commissioner Krabenhoff. All in favor of the motion indicate with aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, we'll close the meeting.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we accept the findings of fact and recommendation by the Planning Commission to adopt ordinance number 2023-1.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion to adopt the ordinance by Commissioner Campbell, second by Commissioner Krabenhoff. Any other comments? Not all in favor of the motion indicate with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mayor.
Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, if I could just thank you to you and to the commissioners and to Matt for your consideration in approving this. I do greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Certainly, and I appreciate Mr. Jacobson's efforts in this. Gave a good, clear, both of you gave a good, clear presentation. Made this an easy call. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have the annual department update from Human Resources Director Darren Brooks. Darren?
Okay, good morning. Thank you for having me today. Hopefully, everybody got this sheet in their packet, I'm hoping. And I was wondering if I could start off with a little HR joke. Okay, so there's this HR director, and after a long, hard life, he actually dies and goes to heaven, which I know is probably, you can't believe that, but goes and dies and goes to
Joke
heaven.
number one. There.
And so he meets St. Peter at the gate, and St. Peter says, we have a new policy. Everybody has to go to hell for one day and heaven for one day, and then you have to decide where you want to spend eternity. So the HR director thought, well, this should be an easy decision. But policy is policy, and you know, HR directors always go with policy. So he gets back in the elevator, he hits the down button. He gets out, and the elevator doors open, and hell is just beautiful. Green grass, golf courses, all his HR buddies are there. Wine, women, and dance, beaches, the whole 9 yards. He said, this is not what I had expected. So the rest of the day, he hangs out. They have a great time. Steak and lobster for dinner. And then they party half the night. Next day, he gets back in the elevator, hits the up button, goes back to heaven, gets out. Heaven is nice too. They're, you know, floating around on clouds and playing harps and reading scripture and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, St. Peter comes back to him and says, have you made your decision? And the HR director said, well, you know, hell was not what I expected. I really like that. All my friends are down there. I'm going to have to choose hell. And St. Peter goes, so be it. So he gets back in the elevator, he hits the down button, doors open up, and it is just horrible. Trash everywhere, smell, his friends are all in chains and downtrodden. And so he walks over to the Mr. Devil and says, what happened? Yesterday it was so beautiful, and then today it's just absolutely horrible. Smell, stink. And the devil puts his arm around the HR director and said, yesterday we were recruiting you, today you're staff.
Oh my God.
So I expect every department head to come with a joke after this. So to get started, organization. I've been here for 12 years now. We have a total of over 30 years of experience in the Clay County HR department. We just added Sarah Ishag a couple of months ago. She's our part-timer and has been doing an excellent job since she's gotten there. I know it's been kind of drinking from a fire hose because she also helps out with central administration as well. Listed under HR functions, this gives you a kind of a list of things that HR does. Personnel management, of course, employee relations. I do all of the start of the annual budget with all the payroll estimates for the following year. We do a lot of work comp and FMLA claims, labor negotiations. The committees that I sit on are the Safety Committee, the EAC, Insurance Committee, Wellness, Building, ARPA, the Detox, which I think we're getting a new acronym for that, and the Finance Committee as well. Also responsible for staffing and advertising, and as well as the Assistant County Administrator duties. Under Clay County data, this is as of January 27th, January 27th, 2023. We had a total of 615 employees. About 75% of our employees are full-time, with 2.7% are part-time and 21.8% are variable hour. 38% of our workforce is men, 61% is women, and 59% live in Minnesota and 40% live in North Dakota. We do have a younger workforce. 370, well, I take that back. The age of the workforce, 39.5% are age 35 and younger, 42% are age 36 to 55, and 18% of our workforce is aged 56 years or older. This past year, we started off with 9 unions. As you all know from earlier discussions, all of those unions were up, contracts were up at the end of the last year. During the year, we had the case aides who decertified, so we're down to 8 unions. 7 of those we have completed contracts with, and we will be going to mediation with the social workers on March 7th of this year. Clay County stats for 2022, we had 80 work comp cases recorded. Citizens Concerns Forms, that's still out on our website. I think that's a great program. Every year I think that's, the citizens get great feedback from our department heads. They can put in a form that comes to me and the department head for them to answer whatever questions the citizens may have. We had 69 of those in 2022. We processed 869 applications, and we have 483 benefit-eligible employees. 278 of those are single plans that are grandfathered. 128 of those are single plans which are under the new criteria, and 77 family plans, which we have been adding to since we changed that a couple years ago. Also of note, there's currently 11 benefit-eligible couples working in Clay County, and I think what we'll end up doing is probably talking about that a little bit during our insurance committee meetings in the future. Employee increase, that kind of just shows you where we are each year. That changes daily, but we usually average between about 605 and 620 employees throughout the year. On the back page, you can see that about 377 employees that are here right now have been here 5 years or less. And then the 2022 hires by type, we hired 90 full-timers, 3 part-timers, 8 seasonal, 7 temporary, and 87 variable hours. Most of those variable hours are going to be in corrections, detox, and juvenile detention. Let's see. As for hires, I thought this was kind of interesting. We hired 38 correctional officers last year, 56 juvenile detention counselors, 19 social services, 26 public health, and 7 election officials. I also would like to report to the board that we are only short 1 correctional officer now, which is pretty darn good, seeing that, I don't know, 6 months ago we were at 15 or 16 short. So that's been really great. And in a minute here, I'll tell you some stats from our recruitment program that I have as well. Let's see, I covered citizens' concerns forums, and then ethnicity. I added this chart as well just to kind of see where we are with ethnicity, and we are gaining more and more new Americans and Hispanic and Latino Americans as we go along as well. Some of HR's accomplishments are that we've completed the transition to the UKG HR payroll system, which was a huge project that started in January of last year. We finally went live in April 8th of last year. And so far, it's been an experience. We find new ways of doing things every day, but overall, I think it went as good as can be expected. I've already talked about the contracts. We moved our HSA, VBAs, and FSAs from further to WEX. We implemented a Medicare supplement option for retirees. We did move from Lakes Country Co-op for our benefits to Blue Cross Blue Shield. And we implemented a referral program for the 24/7 operations back in July. We implemented also a CDL Class A reimbursement program for truck drivers, and I think we've had one, maybe two people go through that already. We also had a couple truck drivers that came with a CDL, so that was good. We'll probably be having some retirements in our highway department this year and next. I talked about welcoming the new admin assistant, Sarah. Like I said, she's been doing great. And we performed 35 status changes, 9 promotions, and 17 positions changes last year alone. As far as the county referral program, I told you I would give you an update on where we are on that. We started that about 7 months ago. As of, not this last payroll, but the payroll before, we had 24 people recruited. We had 19 of our employees that were the recruiters for those 24 people. We recruited 6 full-timers and 18 variable hours. We have made 5 payments so far for a total of $1,250, and we made 1 second payment for a total of $250, for a total of $1,500 to date. The department's breakdown is corrections have had 8 people recruited, detox 3, juvenile detention 11, and law enforcement 2. We've had 2 recruiters who left employment, so they would not be eligible for the payout, and we've had 2 of those that were recruited left employment, and they also would not be eligible for the payout. Some of the things that we'll be watching in the coming years will be the paid family medical and sick leave that's going through legislation right now. Not sure how that's going to shake out. Also, there's some talk about earned safe and sick time, where if a person works 80 hours per year, we would be required to give them 1 hour of sick time for every 30 hours of work, for a maximum of 48 hours per year, but they can carry over some of that with a maximum of 80 hours. And so this could impact our variable hours and our part-timers as well. So we'll see how that legislation goes. As you probably know, legalization of marijuana is also on the docket. And we're going to be looking at whether we're going to decide to go self-insured back in 2026. So we'll be having numerous conversations on that in the next couple of years. And last but not least, I'm looking right now of getting a module from UKG, which is a recruitment and onboarding system module, which would interact with our current UKG system. And that is something that would take a lot of the duplicate errors and duplicate entries once we go out and hire somebody, application process, onboarding, all the paperwork that has to be, and we would basically be completely paperless at these modules. So I just got a demo of that the other day, and we'll be looking into that a little bit more in the near future. So other than that, I think I don't have anything else unless you have any questions.
Any questions for Darren? Commissioner Campbell?
Yeah, thank you, Darren, for that good update. And I kind of want to focus a little bit on your latter part of your presentation when dealing with legislative things going on right now at the Capitol. And one of the concerns that we're hearing about locally here is the leave issue and the potential cost impact that has on employers, and of course Clay County is a large employer here on the border. And to what level are we understanding the language that's there, and what are we doing, if anything, to determine if that were to pass, what would be the ramifications from a budgetary standpoint, both for the county and its employees?
Right. So this is just coming out, and Commissioner Mojo and I had some discussions on this also. And what they're looking at is a 0.7% increase for this program. What I did was I just did some quick calculations, and it looks like the cost to Clay County for next year would be about $300,000. With that, we are allowed to collect 50% of that cost from the employees themselves. It's a very generous program. A person can have up to 24 weeks off per year. They only have to be here 90 days, and as you know, with FMLA, they have to be here a year or work 1,250 hours. So they have to be here for 90 days. Then they could qualify for this paid sick leave. How the whole program is going to run is still kind of, who knows until they decide on the legislation. But I think the cost of the county is going to be about $300,000, half of $300,000 or $150,000
Well,
per year.
yeah, so that in turn ends up being a premium that, as I understand it, would go to the state, and then the state would...
Correct. The state would run this program. It's kind of a cross between para and unemployment, where the individual, this is how I understand it as it is today. The individual would apply to the state for this paid family leave. The state would then determine if that person is eligible or not eligible. And then they would decide on the amount that person should get based on what the county is providing them as far as wages for the past 6 months, year, however, whatever the time period is. So the county would pay half, and then the employees would pay half as well. So that money would go into some fund at the state. I think there's 1.7 billion, not trillion, billion, that the state is going to prime the program with next year. And I think that the first people would be able to apply in July of 2025. I think is correct.
And
So-
just a clarity though on the finances, it's my understanding that the $300,000 from the county would need to come in fiscal year '23. And that's something that a lot of counties and other municipalities are talking about, is if you have to upfront that mid-year in a year, we've already set a budget.
Yeah, and again, I appreciate those clarification, but I'm just trying to understand this and seeing what, as this debate goes on about this legislation, I think that's why it's important that we all talk about this, is there's another component to this that they talk about, and that's that somebody who is gone for 24 weeks, we still have to reserve those positions for them when they return.
Correct.
And, so you're talking to somebody who may be gone 6 months out of the year, and, whether it's somebody working in social service or it's a deputy or whatever, we can't let those positions go unfilled for that length of time. And so then it becomes an issue, how do you recruit for somebody who is going to come in, and you're going to have to tell them, oh, by the way, this job is only going to be good until our other person comes back.
Right.
We have a recruiting problem right now.
Right.
And so is there any, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Darren, but this is some of the things that needs to really be thought out here in that process.
Right. This is a major thing that they've been trying to push for years and years and years. And now that they have an all-Democratic Senate, House, and governor, they think that this is going to go through in one form or another. And
I want to leave the politics out of it.
Yeah.
In terms of who's doing what.
Right.
I want to know, based on what's happening right now,
Right.
what are the consequences to Clay County for that?
Well, like I said, the dollar amount is one thing. The recruitment, what do you do with a position that somebody leaves for possibly 24 weeks? Do you fill them with a temporary person or a part-timer, or, you know, the other unknown, and there was a little confusion I haven't found out yet, is if we provide PTO, sick leave, does that take away from what they would get from the state? Does that offset what they would get from the state? So if they have 2,000 hours of sick leave and they go out for 12 weeks or 24 weeks, and we continue to pay that sick leave, can they still apply for that paid family leave from the state? Some of those answers I don't have at this point, but
That's my understanding based on the facts that I've read through in the document, is that it has to be applicable to the entire population of employees. And so if one person has it, it's the employer asking for the opt-out, not on, because you have to get approval for the opt-out as a whole, not individually on employees.
Another portion of that really amazed me was who's identified as a family member.
yeah, it's a laundry list of people that qualify now. You know, with FMLA, it's a pretty short list, immediate family, mother, father, child. With this, it's aunts and uncles, could be a roommate that you've lived with for 2 or 3 years. I mean, they've really
Grandchildren,
expanded the people.
step-grandparents.
Yeah, they've really expanded the people that this would apply to.
I guess I'm looking at it from the standpoint of this last year and the last 2 years. One of our biggest issues that we've been having to deal with as a county has been our workforce.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear. It's been our county, it's been in the private sector, and it's all over the place. And now all of a sudden, if this goes through, and we have to hold positions, and yet we still need to have that work done, how in the world do we recruit somebody to come in part-time with no benefits?
Right.
To do those things while we're waiting for these other people to come back? That's it. It doesn't address the fact that if somebody needs to be gone 24 weeks,
Right.
It doesn't address that, but
And it's not really saying that everybody will be gone 24 weeks. I look at it as FMLA is 12 weeks, and we handle that now. We don't hire anybody for somebody that's going to be gone for 12 weeks. But once you get into 24 weeks, that's pretty significant time. And I'm assuming that how we do with FMLA is other people pick up that person's duties while they're gone, and then in 12 weeks they come back.
Commissioner
24
Mayfield.
weeks probably makes it a little bit harder.
And I think, obviously, there's valid reasons for why things like this have been proposed, so I don't want to belittle that component. I think from our perspective, we need to offer comments in how we might see gaps in what a law like this could do. For instance, you talk about, we deal with FMLA cases all the time. And as a organization, we can handle that in-house and have a staff member work on this. Part of the problem is that this bill would require a 400-person department at the state to oversee. And so our employee would need to work with someone in St. Paul to process through that. Well, as we've seen with workforce shortages, the state is having a hard time working through applications as it is. And part of our concern is what happens to these mandated positions that we need to have staffed, for instance, in our correctional facility or in nurses, for example. So there's that component. There's a licensure component. We've had a major delay in license approvals for some of our licensed employees. That's concerning. And I'm not a child care expert, but I have 4 kids, so I can talk a little bit about child care. And if this is something that we're hoping is going to solve the child care crisis, it's not. For 24 weeks doesn't even get you close to the tier in child care you're looking at 17, 18 months. Then it changes, the ratios change there. You know, if we're talking about adding departments, maybe we should add half of those people and put them in the licensure childcare component piece, so we can really solve what that workforce bottleneck is in regards to childcare. So I don't want it to be misconstrued that this board is supporting or not supporting or asking for things to be completely killed. There are some very big concerns that municipalities have. And then furthermore, there's been some talk, I don't know how serious it is, about exempting government entities from this program entirely. The benefits would still apply to our employees, but we wouldn't have to pay in. Well, that just shoves our $300,000 annual fee to other local entities that are struggling after COVID as it is. So I know this wasn't a legislative platform report, but this is something that our board really needs to watch carefully.
And I don't think there's any exemption for small business, and you and I had talked about some of these small businesses have to go to this as well, and it might put them out of business in some.
Yeah, there's no tier currently based on employees. And if you look at, there's about 11 other states in the nation that are doing things similar, and Minnesota has really the most expansive program proposed. There are other states that have done forms of this up to 12 weeks. Minnesota is currently the only one proposing up to 24 weeks, but these other states do have thresholds under 15 employees, under 50 employees, a step in like that.
Right.
And when you talk about other states, North Dakota looms large. They have killed the bill for similar legislation over there. And once again, borders, counties, border cities in Minnesota are in competition with these people, not just for employees, and keeping in mind, part of the cost of this will be borne by employees, but for businesses. And so, and the cost will be borne by them. So it is a very hot button issue, and I think it does reflect a lot of concern in our human resources area. Any other comments, questions?
Well, I certainly appreciate the conversation. I appreciate Commissioner Mojo's comments, and I agree. And the intent here is to understand what is going on in St. Paul and how that impacts us as a county, as an employer, and our employees, and all of our local establishments that we work hard for to retain here in Clay County. And so it's a important conversation to have, and it's we can't ignore the reasons why some of it is probably being proposed, because there's some need for assurance from people who do run into hard times as well. So how do you find that balance, and that's what we're looking for. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to comment on those. But
Commissioner Krappenoff?
Yeah, just follow up briefly. So as I've read a little bit, we covered a lot of ground already, but they talk about that the idea of going from 12 to 24, more of an exception. And do you have a sense of past history, how, what you've seen, what those type of situations would be that would throw them into something longer term than what we're accustomed to? Or do you understand what I'm saying here off? And do you see this?
So somebody that would be 24 weeks instead of 12?
Yeah, or something that pops them into that area.
Right. It could be just about anything, from everything from maternity leave to bonding with the child to an illness or sickness. Usually what we do is, if somebody is out on FMLA for 12 weeks, after that 12 weeks, we get another fitness for duty for them to find out, are they coming back? Are they not coming back? Is it going to be longer or shorter? And normally 9 times out of 10, after the 12 weeks, if somebody's going to be coming back and they need 13 weeks or even 14 weeks or whatever, the department head will extend that to them so that they can come back. Because to come to the board, get approval, advertise, interview, do all of that, it would take that long anyway. If somebody comes back after 12 weeks and they say, you know, I'm still going to need to be out another year based on my serious health condition or issues or whatever, then we take a close look at, can we keep that person and how long can we keep that person? And so that's a kind of an individualistic decision that the department head and myself, Steve, will make as we go along.
Okay, thank you. That helped.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Darren.
All right, thank you.
Next on the agenda, request for approval, issue request for proposal for distribution of the local homeless prevention aid funds. And our Rhonda Porter, our Director of Social Services, is here to speak on this. I don't know if you've got a joke to start with, but
Well, I was thinking about that as I came today.
I don't know if there's a lot of social services jokes.
Yeah. Next time, I'll be prepared. All right, thank you, Chair and Commissioners. I am here today to talk about the local homeless prevention aid that was allocated to counties in the 2021 legislative session. In your packet, I provided a summary sheet as well as a summary of this aid from the Department of Revenue along with the statute and the aid amounts that are allocated for 2023 to the counties in Minnesota. So just generally, as you see in the packet, this aid has some very specific requirements in terms of targeting families and helping them to prevent losing housing and experiencing homelessness. The aid is targeting families with children who are eligible for pre-kindergarten through grade 12. And there's various things there you can see that in the proposals they would be looking for in terms of how we utilize these funds. Unaccompanied youth is one of the target populations. Effort is to connect families with social services and maintain stability in their current housing. It could include housing navigation, legal representation, family outreach. They're looking for proposals to provide rental assistance for specific periods of time, as well as providing support and case management services. So the legislation does have some defined parameters on the utilization of the funds. We were allocated, Clay County was allocated $223,581 for state fiscal year 2023. So those funds will be available starting July 1 through June 30th, 2024. The funding is scheduled to occur every year for 6 years. However, that amount will be adjusted based on the formula that they have identified. And that formula includes county population as well as student data-based aid. So in the summary sheet that I provided to you, it does outline what that formula is. So it makes it a little bit challenging as we approve projects for funding, not necessarily knowing what the ongoing allocation will be if that changes. So that's a piece we would need to work within. This aid, the county has flexibility on how they would choose to distribute or allocate these funds. It's coming out of the Department of Revenue. My thought was that a request for proposal might be the best approach. We have a number of community providers and experts in our community that work with housing programs that already distribute various housing funds. We have had some of those entities contact us already questioning or wondering what the county might intend to use the funds for. Again, my thought was that a more formalized process might make the most sense. The county could choose to consider establishing a more formalized panel to review the RFP before it goes out, to maybe appoint a commissioner to perhaps serve on the committee that would review the proposals coming back. So there's some flexibility on how this could be administered, but I wanted to get it before you so that we could start the planning process so that we're ready to distribute those funds in July.
Thank you. Rhonda, the first thing that comes to mind when I deal this is, I mean, it's a pretty significant amount of funds, and I obviously, is this something that could be used that could, I'm going to give you an example of when we've levied for our Clay County HRA, or Housing Development. By doing that, they're able to leverage and get additional funds. Would this be eligible for something like that?
You know, it's possible our community providers, you know, in many grants that they write, there's often, okay, what is additional funding sources? So I'm not so sure that they would be able to leverage. It's possible they could leverage some additional funds, but probably more importantly, it might allow them to say, you know, we're receiving X number of dollars from this pot of money and we're requesting additional funds from this pot of money. So it's more of a collaborative. I believe these are state funds coming out of the Department of Revenue, so how they could be utilized to leverage federal funds, I'm not exactly sure, but.
Okay.
Commissioner Altenberg. I'm sorry, I'm reading ahead. Sorry, you're not a commissioner, Mr. Altenberg. Commissioner Kravinoff.
So on the RFPs, you view this as truly competitive grants, and certainly matches are a piece of that, as you mentioned.
Yep.
Just with the demand amount going toward this right now, do you see this as the amount of money they're talking about as being something that is sustainable and kind of, and where I'm coming at, you said you don't know what it leads to year after year, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, I'm anticipating growth, so I think we're probably going to be okay. You know, that would be my gut feeling on that, but at the same time, how do we position our, on the RPs, would they be one-year allocations then? That's what I want to get at here, or would they fit out over a period of time?
It could be whatever the board would like to see in that RFP. My thought is one-year allocations.
Okay.
You know, as you look at the areas that the legislation targets, I think a big focus is purchase of service kinds of things for families that might be one-time purchases that help them lift them out of homelessness or help hopefully prevent homelessness. When you tie the funds up into positions where our partners are hiring positions, that's where it gets a little bit more sticky, because those positions, in terms of recruitment, if you're recruiting for only a year, that kind of thing. So I think all of those things could be weighed out in the proposals as we evaluate what the sustainability of the proposals would look like. The piece that I am a little bit concerned about, this is $20 million that was allocated in these funds, and I know during the 2021 legislative session, there was conversation about carving out some of these funds specifically for tribes. So if that were to happen in future years without any additional funds being put back into the 20 million, that would mean less, you know, less distribution to the counties. And so it's possible we could see that allocation decrease. The other piece is that as I participate in my state association, there were many counties that commented about the formula, particularly the student data. there was conversation that in some school districts, perhaps the recording of homelessness and students who are homeless was not as robust as other districts. And so therefore, some counties' allocation fared better than might have been expected. So if counties, or if school districts now beef up that documentation, and you still have the 20 million pot of money, does that mean allocations will look different? So those are pieces to be thinking about. I know that there are some pretty significant proposals out there, particularly with Representative Keeler and regarding homelessness and homelessness prevention funds. So whether they would, if that would pass, if that would supplement this. So there's a lot of questions on the table. But I do feel we have needs in our community. We have robust providers out there that are working with homelessness and homelessness prevention, and I'd like to see us at least look at allocating these funds, and we'll probably have to watch this going forward.
Rhonda, is
Thank you.
just what I'm hearing in response to that, the RFP, would it go out for a year with an option to renew, or would it go out as an indeterminate amount of time, but they'll deal with whatever funding we have? How do you envision that?
I would like to see the RFP approve one-year funding with our current allocation, which is July 1 through June of 2024, with the option of renewal based on continued allocation. And I'd certainly want to work with Brian in his office on that RFP and make sure we had the correct language in there so that it's clear how that would be going forward.
Okay. Commissioner Campbell?
Thank you. I just want to, I'm just wondering if we shouldn't reach out to Clay County HRA. Right? And the reason I say that is they work a lot with a lot of these demographics that we're talking about here. And one of the things that in the past, they've been able to take some funds that they've received from the county and leverage those dollars to get additional dollars. And so to me, if this would qualify for that, they work with some of these exact same people in some of the same issues
Yeah.
that we're talking about. Now, I'm not suggesting that that could be the only source, but it seems to me if we have an entity who already works on our behalf that deals with homeless people or homeless prevention, if we have those people working in that already, and they can turn that $223,000 annually into $1 million based on leverage, why wouldn't we want to consider that?
Yeah, and Steve and I met with a few of our community partners as they reached out to us about this allocation, and Clay County HRA, Dara was one of those.
Okay.
As well as some of her partners, CAP-LP, Churches United. So we met with a group of people just to talk about this allocation. All of them had proposals and ideas and areas that they felt this money should be targeted toward. And I think that meeting prompted at least me to think that perhaps an RFP process might be the most appropriate, and that would allow an organization like Clay HRA to include in their proposal that we could turn this $223,000 into this based on. So it would allow those organizations an opportunity to express that equally. And then the selection committee could consider all of those factors in
I guess
approving the funds. Yep.
But I would hope that exactly as you stated, if you could include something within the RFP, if you have these funds, would you have the ability to somehow obtain matching funds or something, or what type of matching funds could you gain by having these funds available?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a critical piece. And I have communicated quite a bit with St. Louis County. They actually just issued an RFP as well a couple weeks ago, and was looking at their RFP process. And a part of the scoring piece was that sustainability, how can you leverage other funding sources? And so it fits really well with that process.
We can incorporate that in and have it fair to all of them, then great.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments?
I would like to ask if I can certainly coordinate the RFP process and work with Brian's office on that, making sure all the pieces are in place and setting out the timeline. Would the board like to consider appointing somebody to the review process, either to look at the RFP before it goes out and/or to sit on the selection review committee?
I think that certainly would be beneficial. I know that Commissioner Krabanoff has his state association, has Health and Human Services, so that would likely align with that work, if you would be willing.
Yeah, I definitely look forward to that.
Do you need we'd need a motion then?
I also strongly agree about the request to get the proposal and your timeline going.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we move for the approval to issue a request for proposal for distribution of the local homeless prevention aid funds that are being allocated to Clay County.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, do we want to include that Commissioner
We'll
Krabbenhoff
do that separately.
separately? Okay. Okay, have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we have Commissioner Krabanoff serve as the board member to review the RFPs and in the selection process.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, the motion on the floor is passed. New motion to have Commissioner Krabbenhoff assigned to help in this process by motion made by Commissioner Campbell, second by Commissioner Mojo. Any discussion on this?
Just clarify that would be added to his committee portfolio with.
Correct.
And I'll abstain from the vote.
All right. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rhonda.
All right. Next on the agenda, update of the 2050 baseline demographic forecast and annual metro profile from MetroCog. We have Adam Altenberg, who's not a commissioner, and Ari Del Rosario from MetroCog, going to present this today. Gentlemen?
All right. Well, thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Again, my name is Adam Altenberg, and with me is Ari Del Rosario. And we're here to talk about two documents that MetroCog has recently completed, the 2050 baseline demographic forecast.
Speak a little closer to the mic.
Is this better? Yeah. We're here to talk about two documents that MetroCog has recently put together, the 2050 baseline demographic forecast and the 2022 Metro Profile. Both of these studies have impacts on a number of other planning efforts, and both provide good information on demographic and socioeconomic trends that we're seeing in the community. So starting with the baseline demographic forecast, these forecasts are completed every 5 years as part of our standard transportation planning process alongside our other core documents and studies. With this process, we develop population, household, and employment forecasts for Cass and Clay counties, as well as cities and townships within our metropolitan planning area. These projections help to inform our travel demand model, which helps to assess future roadway, transit, freight, and other multimodal planning needs over a 25 to 30-year planning period. But these forecasts are also beneficial for a number of other community planning efforts, such as comprehensive plans, sub-area analyses, and other local studies. So as part of this study's outreach, and to better understand some of the trends that we were seeing in the area, We gathered input from local professionals across a number of different specialty fields, including social services, economic development, K through 12 education, housing assistance, and the Home Builders Association of Fargo-Moorhead. What I didn't include on the slide is we also had a study review committee that was comprised of planners and city administrators from jurisdictions across our metro area that helped to provide some oversight as well as kind of additional insight on some of the projections that we developed. And then you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, we did develop promotional video. That's just a 2 to 3 minute video that kind of talks about the project and some of the highlights that we've put together. And then also, if you go to MetroCog's website, there's a 2-pager fact sheet that kind of summarizes some of the statistics that I'll go into here in a minute. So how do our projections compare to actual census or census estimates over the years? I tried to figure out how to put together a graphic that kind of shows this better summarizes this. So what you can see in this chart on the left-hand side of each of these columns, the blue column are our actual census estimates for our metropolitan planning area from 2000 to 2020. And then the color bars to the right of those are our demographic forecasts starting from 1986 and then going up through 2017. And what you can see here is that our actual growth in our metropolitan area has actually exceeded our projections by an average of 2 to 4% every time that we do these study updates. The only year that we actually overprojected was this last go around in 2017, and you can see here that we overprojected by an average of 3.8%. The only city that grew faster than some of our projections was West Fargo. The main reason for this, though, is that we started these projections back in 2016. At that time, we were anticipating the FM diversions project to begin start later in 2019, 2020. So that had a major impact on some of these projections. We also, with regards to the city of Horace, we knew a lot of things were happening with the community. We knew that there were going to be several new schools in that area. We knew that the city of Horace and City of Fargo had signed a wastewater agreement, which had been a limiting factor on their growth for prior years. But we were a couple years off in some of these higher growth projections for Horace. But they're seeing that today. So we were probably about 2 to 3 years off in the projections that we developed in 2017 for Horace. The next 2 slides kind of go into a little bit of the weeds of how we develop these projections. So in addition to the information that we gathered through stakeholders, there are 3 main components that go into our model estimation. The first component are called trend variables. So these look at different age structures as well as industry and labor distribution rates in our communities. The next are called dynamic variables, and these are just your basic birth rates, death rates, and in and outbound migration in our area. And the last component are called constants, and this looks at household sizes in relation to different demographics in our area, labor force participation rates, and then gender ratio. And again, kind of going into where we get some of our specific information, the first source that we look at is the American Community Survey. It looks at 5-year estimates for the initial cohort populations as well as household size distributions. We also get information from the CDC Wonder data system, which provides information on death rates, birth rates, and gender ratio. We also take a close look at census data from 2000 and 2010 that helps us to determine the household population and distribution makeup. And then finally, the Bureau of Labor Statistics provides information on labor force participation rates, and then also the quarterly census of employment and wages. So the first numbers that came back to us when we put all these components into our model were population rates for Clay and Cass counties, as well as the metropolitan statistical area as a whole. What we found, and the projections as of 2022 show that the Fargo-Moorhead area is projected to grow by 107,000 people over the next 25 to 30 years. For Clay County, we're projecting a growth of 28,000 people in the next 25 to 30 years. And then for Cass County, we're projecting a population growth of 79,000 in that same time period. And this chart just kind of goes in some of the numbers that we put together for other jurisdictions in the area. One thing I'll note is that I don't have this in any of the slides, but if you look at the report, we do have population and household projections for 16 of the 30 townships in Clay County. These are the townships that are immediately surrounding the FM area, as well as townships that are close to Barnesville and Hawley. So if you're interested in some of those township projections, we do have those in this report. But again, for the population forecast, we're estimating an additional 28,000 residents in Clay County over the next 25 to 30 years. With regard to households, for Clay County, we are anticipating an additional 10,700 new households over the next 25 to 30 years, and then approximately 43,700 households for the metropolitan area as a whole. And then lastly, these are some of our employment forecasts for the Fargo-Moorhead area. I don't have this on the slide, but for Clay County specifically, in 2020, there's an estimated 44,500 jobs in the area. By 2050, we're projecting 52,300 jobs. So it's an additional 7,800 jobs that we're projecting over the next 25 to 30 years for Clay County alone, and then approximately 52,000 jobs for the metropolitan area as a whole. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ari.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. I'm here on behalf of MetroCog just to present some of the findings from our annual Metro Profile. This document was completed at the end of last year. The purpose of the document is to provide a snapshot of what our metro area looks like using data from the previous year. So for this profile, we were using data from 2021. This is something that we track annually so we can see some of the trends. And this document is available on our website, MetroCog's website, as well as if you wanted to look at previous Metro profiles to kind of compare how we've been doing. As for the contents of this document, it's split into 5 sections. We have the community profile, roadways, freight, bike and pedestrian, and transit sections. I'll go through each section just to give a brief overview. So in the community profile section of this document, we have information about what our population looks like currently, how many people have come into the metro area in the past year, so 2,293 new residents from 2021. There's a breakdown by jurisdiction in the bottom left-hand corner. You can see there that Fargo makes up about half of the metro area, and there's also a breakdown of the Moorhead making up almost 20%, and there's also it's broken up into the rest of rural Clay as well. You can see there under 10% of the population of the area. And then on the right-hand side graph there, you can see our annual population growth and that percentage change in the past 10 years. In terms of demographics in our region, the median age in our metro area is still considerably below that of the median age of the country as a whole. It's interesting to see that along with a younger population in our metro, and we also have a higher percentage of those with a bachelor's degree or higher. A lot of that could be explained by the presence of the colleges in our metro area. In terms of those that speak a language other than English at home, that percentage, as well as foreign-born, is still considerably below that of the country as a whole, but that is continuing to increase. You can also find information about age distribution as well as racial composition in there as well. In terms of employment numbers, so as I mentioned, this is using 2021 data as this was completed last year. And there you can visually see the unemployment rate by month on the top right-hand side. A lot of it's still bouncing back from the pandemic as unemployment rate continues to head down to, it's at 2.85% in 2021. There's a considerable gap between the unemployment rate in our region compared to the country as a whole. Higher percentage of those in the labor force, a slightly higher median household income in our metro compared to the country as a whole, lower percent in poverty compared to the country as a whole. It should be noted that that number was actually above the country's percentage in poverty in 2020, but flipped in 2021. And a new metric that we included in this profile was the working from home population. That, as we can imagine, has increased significantly since pre-pandemic levels, and we expect that to continue increasing. And there's also a graph there for the top 10 industries ranked by employment. In terms of housing in the area, our average household size is below that of the average household size in the country at 2.32 compared to 2.6. The owner-occupied rate is below that of the country as well at 56.2%. Some of that could be explained again by our younger population and college-age students. And the median house price in 2021, while increasing, is still below that of the country as a whole, and there's some information there about the number of housing units metro-wide as well as the housing that was built in 2021. The section about roadways in this document includes vehicle miles traveled, which increased compared to I think it should say 2021 there, which did increase. We have our average commute time in minutes is significantly below that of the country as a whole. It's at 17.6 minutes. The other information that's in this section include the roadway projects that were completed in 2021, safety and pavement condition, and our functional classification network map is in there as well. In terms of freight, we have information here about air cargo total landed weight in 2021, which remains stable. Our truck travel time reliability index, which is still looking good compared to the targets that are set by MnDOT and the NDDOT. And we also have in this section a map of the truck unreliable road segments, if you wanted to look at that as well. Also in this section is our rail and air transportation data. We have information here about our Amtrak system, which is still struggling to get back to pre-pandemic levels. You can see that in 2021, there was a decrease in ridership compared to the year previous. Compared to our air passengers from our airport, we can see that passenger count has increased. It's still below pre-pandemic levels, but we expect that will be able to recover shortly when we look at this data again later this year. There's also a rail and air map for everyone's information in there as well. And then we have a bike and pedestrian section. In this section, we include the non-motorized crashes data. We use Strava, which is an app that people use to keep track of their bike trips. So that's interesting data to see. The number of people that have been using that did drop in 2021. There was a significant increase of bike ridership in 2020. We also have in this section the bike and ped projects that occurred in 2021, and a map of the bike network, as well as information about a Metrocog study that we do annually on our bike and ped counts. And finally, the last section of this document is the transit section. We have in here our MapBus ridership in 2021, which decreased from 2020. One interesting thing to note in here is our paratransit ridership increasing. That has continued to increase in 2022, and it will be interesting to see how these numbers change as we recover again from the pandemic. Also in this section, we have the transit projects that were completed in 2021, including route changes, fares, and marketing studies. There's a route map in this document, as well as our fleet inventory purchases and facility improvements. And with that, there's a lot of information in there, a lot of data to go through, but if you've got any questions, let us know.
Questions? Commissioner Mosho.
Just a comment, I want to thank you for presenting this. I know this is a lot to go through, but the work that MetroCog has done to produce it and get it out to the entities, excuse me, I really do appreciate it. It's helpful for us as we move forward with our annual departments.
I've got one question, just off the top of my head. The community, Winnipeg's an example, following a diversion project where flood reduction is markedly, or the possibility of floods is markedly reduced. Was that factored into these future, the data here on growth?
Yes, it was. And an example of that is if you look specifically at the city of West Fargo, you'll see that their population numbers start to slow down in the next 10 years. That's because this city is more or less built out at this time. They have very limited options to expand their city boundaries. But with the diversion in place, we looked at the city's growth going to the north. If you're familiar, that's where they have their current lagoons right now. Those are being decommissioned. So it's a prime area for the city to be in growth after 2030. But we do factor that in for all the jurisdictions in the area, the impacts of the diversion.
How would that affect rural Clay County?
You'll see that, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. Some of the townships do see a decrease in population and households, mostly along the townships near the Red River. Townships that are further out do see increases in population, but for some of those townships that are closer to the diversion, we do see decreases in population.
Okay. Commissioner Krabbenhoft.
One number that surprised me a little bit, maybe you can just add a little more to it. Paratransit, it was up 42%. What would account for something, that jump? Is that availability? Is that?
That is a great question. I know that from sitting in on MapBus meetings recently that number has continued to climb. I'm not too sure really what the reason for paratransit ridership being ahead of their regular route service. Your guess is as good as mine for the reason for that.
Part of it,
I don't know if they've increased, if it's like an increase in service or anything that is spurred on that.
Okay, it just really stood out. And then the last question. So obviously you do these reports over what, 5 years, or kind of come back to them? Is that correct?
Well, for the metropolitan profile, we do that every year. For the demographic forecast, that's every 5?
Every 5 years.
Okay, thank you. Great job.
Any other questions? Really interesting data. We appreciate you bringing it to us. It's data like this. It allows us to make informed decisions. And what MetroCog has done has been invaluable to the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And County Engineer Justin Sorum is here with a number of items on the agenda. We'll start you off. Request for approval of response letter to SAP 014-601-007 claim.
Yeah, so the first item I have is a letter in response to a claim that was filed by Dennis Drews Incorporated. So this was on a grading project on CASA 1. During the project, there were utility conflicts that caused Drews not to be able to work for 24 days. So my response to this claim has been reviewed by State Aid and the Attorney's Office, and I'm seeking permission to mail the response letter that was in the packet.
Any questions?
I'll make a motion to support. Yes.
Commissioner Mojo.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I'll make a motion to support sending the letter.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Mojo, seconded by Commissioner Campbell. Any questions or comments?
This was also ran through our Highway Tracking Committee, and Highway Tracking Committee agreed with Justin's position and calculations on this letter.
All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next will be a request to reduce retainage to 1% on SAP 014-591-007.
Yeah, so this is the Safe Routes to School project in Hawley that we were the project sponsor on. So the city and contractor are still working through final quantities. That's taking quite a bit longer than anticipated. So as required by statute, I would like to reduce retainage to 1%, because there is not any corrective work that needs to be done on the project.
Okay.
Move
Commissioner
approval.
Campbell.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Campbell, second by Commissioner Mojo. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next.
Yeah, so the third item I have is for the small city street allotment for 2023. So the auditor's office calculates the annual amount to the small cities, and that amount this year is $81,918.67. And then Moorhead's share follows the agreement that was done in 2005, and that sunsets in 2025, and the city of Moorhead's amount is $388,200.13.
Discussion.
Mr. Chair, I'd move resolution 2023-07.
I'll second the motion.
A motion by Commissioner Campbell, seconded by Commissioner Mojo. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
And then the final item I have this morning is permission to advertise the mill and overlay project on CASA 26. So this project will go from CASA 27 to CASA 19, 7.5 miles in total. And the proposed letting date would be March 21st.
Discussion on this motion or item.
Move approval to advertise for mill and overlay project on CASA 26.
Second the motion.
Motion by Commissioner Campbell, second by Commissioner Mojo. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. You're batting 1,000. Thank you, Justin. Next, we've got request to renew the food services contract for the correctional facility, juvenile facility, and detox. We have Jail Administrator Carrie Tuton, James O'Donnell, Director of the Juvenile Facility. And Troy, you're here with us for the detox. No, I don't see, I don't see Troy.
No, just us.
Just you guys.
So, good morning, Commissioners. We're here on behalf of the juvenile facility, the detox facility, and the correctional facility. We are asking for a signature on either one of two contracts. We're in the back half now of our food service contract. We did 3 years with them, and now it's a year-to-year basis for another 3 years. But we also asked them for the option to amend that contract to a straightforward 3-year period from February 2023 to 2026. There have been increases to that contract, 8.5% increase for cost of goods and 8.5 for wage adjustment, which is pretty reasonable considering. So I think what Troy and I are looking for is a possible signature on the 3-year contract.
And just to note, the contract still outlines for the juvenile plan that they'll abide by the National School Lunch Standards, so we'll have all that taken care of.
Okay, any questions?
Just a clarification, if I could, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Campbell?
So the 8.5 on the wage adjustment, would that be, that would be in the first year, and then that would just go throughout the 3 years?
That's my understanding, the 3 years.
It's not per year, it's a total?
No, the
it's a
8.5 for the
one-time
wage
deal.
adjustment is for 3 years.
Yeah, but it's implemented in the first year.
Correct. Correct. But the 8.5, that obviously could go up after this first year.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, one of the best ways to look at that, those two increases would be the ending page of that. It goes the effective date of February 7th, 2023, and the meal counts on the sliding scales, and that's where it starts. And then per the contract after this, it follows the Urban and Consumer Food Index price every year. That's what the increase would be rated on. Overall, for the juvenile side of things, I guess, juvenile meal prepared to the National School Lunch Standard, $2.81. That's food acquired, prepared, and everything. It's a pretty good price.
Our meals went from 2.35 to a little over $3 per meal. So still a lot cheaper from what happened in Cass County with their food service contract. That went up 40%.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mojo?
Thank you. I just want to comment, I replenished my children's lunch account today, and so these numbers are similar to what Morehead Schools is charging for those lunches and meals as well. So I would make a motion to approve the recommendation of signing the 3-year contract.
I'll second.
Motion to approve the contract by Commissioner Mojo, second by Commissioner Kramenhoft. Any further discussion?
Can I just ask, how does this equate to what was projected in your 2023 budgets?
It still should put me, relatively projected, I guess, a little bit under, I'm hoping.
I'm going to be short about 2% in what I projected for my 2023 line item for.
You'll be short about 2%.
2%.
I just follow up on that, then I think that would be something that we'd probably want to address with the 10-member or 11-member group.
Will do.
Any further questions? If not, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And next item, request for a change bank for the Resource Recovery Center.
Thank you for taking the time this morning. I'm just here to request a change bank for our scale house. We've been averaging about 28 to 35 customers a day. So we just need a little bit of cash to make change. Our credit card machine isn't in yet, so everybody's been paying cash or check. So we're looking for up to a $300 cash, change bank that we can use in the future.
Questions? Entertain a motion.
So offered.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Mosho, second by Commissioner Campbell. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner, or committee reports. Start with Commissioner Mosho.
Thank you. Just take a minute. Last week, with Commissioner Gross being absent, I was asked to attend the Highway Tracking Committee for him with Commissioner Campbell. I can report on the first half of it. I did have a scheduling conflict on the last half of it. We talked about the State Aid Highway 1 claim letter that this board did just approve. Talked about the Diversion Authority MOU and reimbursement agreement. Talked about the next steps in regards to road plans and closures and conversations that are happening with Holy Cross Township. I appreciate Justin's providing a map for clarity, and I know that that has been something that they've worked a lot with the farmers to make sure that all field accesses could continue to be accessed, and there will be some changes, but hopeful that the plan will reflect their concerns. And talked about the funding for bridge replacement on County Road 51. That next day, I attended the Wild Rice Watershed meeting virtually. There was a lot of conversation in regards to permits and plans. There was concerns brought up about downstream impacts for some of those cities once the diversion plan will go through. Was able to comment that based on the plans, there will be some minimal impacts to that, which was their understanding, just needed some clarification. And then Thursday, I attended the SWCD meeting. They do have a new time, 3 o'clock on that second Thursday for that. Did have some long discussions about potential changes to board attendance requirements and if they will be attending a meeting and receiving per diems, making sure that they're providing board reports similar to how we do committee reports as well. Tree Week is coming up. If you have some need for planting trees, make sure and reach out to the SWCD. That's a great option. And then talked about the Snaky Creek project funding. And I also, just for sake of bringing it back up, I know we talked about the crestwood pollinator habitat being a great collaboration between the two. And when we talked at our county-owned property, there was a question if there would be a possibility of adding another site like that on some of our county-owned properties. So that will continue that discussion going forward. Friday, I had a public policy committee meeting of the Chamber of Commerce to talk about Senate File 2 that we had talked about a little bit with our HR director earlier this morning. That afternoon, or early morning rather, had a long meeting with Senator Kubek, who was back in town from the legislature to hear over 50 businesses and representatives were at the UMCOMs. Commissioner Ebinger was there as well to talk about concerns, gaps in how the legislation reads currently. I'm hopeful that we will continue to work with Senator Kupek on crafting a language that is favorable for as many of our citizens as possible. Certainly, border cities present challenges and border counties present challenges, and having a neighbor next door without a policy like that is concerning. One item I did neglect to talk about is American Crystal Sugar currently has union contracts with their workers, and having union contracts with employees in Minnesota and North Dakota would provide challenges in how they negotiate that, and certainly that would be of concern for us as well. Yesterday, I attended the Finance Committee meeting. We did talk about a proposal in regards to some of the contracts that we have out. We will continue deliberation on how we deal with that, and then did have a proposal from Sandy Thorne and Rhonda that really did seem to make sense in increasing efficiencies and tracking and accurate tracking with how they deal with those departments, and I think that proposal will come forward to this board as well. That afternoon, or a continuation, we had the detox planning committee meeting. It was the last one before this board had action, so I know I said earlier thank you, but really a lot of work has gone into the design and proposals for this board. Just small adjustments in regards to the plans. Made sure we talked about the windows and making sure that they are up to the durable standard that will be needed, and talked about the future FF&E needs, making sure that Joe's working on a list with Troy to make sure that's addressed. And then we're still waiting back on the variance letters in regards to the B3 items, hopeful that we can have a response. And as you saw earlier, the schedule has been announcement for bids today and then going forward. We are a little concerned. We do need the state to approve the plans. That is the major unknown in regards to our timeline. Hopeful if we get in early spring, we can start construction early, but we need the state to sign off on those plans. So I think between Klein McCarthy and Gertz and staff, we will continue to reach out to them to see how the progress is going forward. Would hate to see a delay in that. As we all know, delays usually mean cost increases. So that's where we stand with that. And then I believe that concludes my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Campbell?
Thank you. On the February 7th, we did have the Highway Tracking Committee meeting. Commissioner Mojo talked about the first three items. We also received word that we received a $375,000 funding to replace a bridge on County Road 51. The new shop, we've now moved into the new shop in Comstock, and I believe now this week we should have, or this last week, we should have moved into the new shop in Georgetown. We are working on scheduling our township meeting to determine the maintenance rates for the next year. Plan is to have that around the 28th and the 1st, and then a meeting with all the township officers to follow shortly after that. We're looking at a time frame of May or June to establish our next 5-year plan. And on the 8th, we had the Red River Regional Dispatch Budget and Finance kickoff meeting. Basically, we received the audit presentation from the year 2021. That went very well. The good news there that came out of that is that that operation had revenues over expenditures during that year of $583,000. So that's encouraging. And then we just basically looked at setting up a timeline now for preparing the 2024 budget, which has to be to the full dispatch board by May 15th, I believe it is. So we'll be meeting a couple times to deal with that. Then on the 9th, we actually had the Red River Regional Dispatch Board meeting. A couple of the we had a presentation regarding the facility, and we spent some considerable time talking about the land that we're going to be leasing from Sanford. And we're looking at a 50-year lease. It's going to start off at, right now the discussion is $36,000 a year for the first 20 years. And then there is going to be language that would allow for 10-year increments with escalated rental rates based on those other years. Other notes of significance of that meeting, the building plans for that area right now is around 15,300 square feet. That has been cut by about 2,032 feet from its original plan, so obviously there's been some work involved to try to keep that as competitive as we can and cost efficient as we can, while at the same time planning for a future for the next 20 to 30 to 40 years. Currently, the dispatch facility has 8 councils in place. This one will have room to expand that to 18 with 2 supervisor councils, so it would be 20. And then there would be another 6 training councils that could also be, if need be, put into service on a regular basis. So the potential there is to go from 8 councils to 26 in this new facility. So that's pretty significant. And I'm sure Dave took good notes and he'll probably add to that. So I'll leave that there. That same afternoon, then I went to Fergus Falls for the Lakes Country Service Cooperative meeting. The item that's probably of most interest here is we continue to talk about the YES program that's held here in Moorhead. And that has been operating in the red for quite some time, so there's going to have to be some decisions on the future course of that program moving forward, and I believe that in March it's going to be further discussed through Lakes Country. And there's been Jeremy Kovash, our director, and Brandon Lunick have had many conversations together in planning that out. So when all is said and done, we will make sure that we're in agreement with Moorhead Public Schools on any potential changes, if any, that will occur in that program. On the 13th, as Commissioner Mojo mentioned, we had the Finance Committee meeting. There were 2 issues on the agenda. One, we have to have a follow-up meeting today because there was no decision made. And the other one, as Commissioner Mojo mentioned, was dealing with the casework electronics document management system that in Sandy Thorne's department, that's the only department that currently does not use that program within social services, and she's requested that be done. We did agree to recommend moving forward with that. There will be an investment in terms of upfront dollars. Excuse me, just give me a second here. Do you have those numbers, Steve, Andy, or? Anyways, it's gonna be brought forward to move forward with that and have it come out of reserves. Also the good part about that is there's a 66% federal participation in paying for that, and it'll also result in an awful lot of time savings, staff time that we've also seen throughout social services when they went to that system, which is well liked by all of those people using it. And then on the 13th, we then also had the Clay County Substance Use meeting, and Commissioner Mojo reported on that, and I do not have anything more to add to that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Kravinoff.
Well, my schedule was light this last week. I don't have any committee reports. I do want to report, though, I did go to St. Paul on February 8th for the Legislative Salary Council, first of 3 meetings. Just to clarify a little bit from what I spoke about it earlier, now that I know the intent and the timelines. First of all, there are 16 of us on the council, not 8. And so 8 were chosen through the governor's office. The other 8 were through the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So it's a little bigger group than I had first thought. Anyway, very productive meeting we had that day. I want you to know I got clarity very much. It's simply during this period of time, February 8th till the 31st, I can have no legislative contact. However, I am able to go to the Association of Counties Legislative Conference, and I want to hear certainly more about Health and Human Services and their policies and things that they're going to move forward legislatively, because certainly after the 31st, I want to re-engage in the activities, with our legislators. So just want to give that clarification on that.
Thank you. My report on the 7th, I went to the Criminal Justice Advisory Board. Janelle Cheney mentioned the shifting of juvenile agent numbers, or the number of the cases have come down, and she has shifted one agent over to look at some of the enhanced adult caseload. There are a number of difficult cases for their people to work, and this shift is going to allow them to have one agent to focus on some of these difficult cases. We also discussed a REAM grant. That's going to be a funding. Currently, if somebody is sentenced to electronic monitoring, they pay for the use of the device that is provided to them to be tracked. There are people, as Janelle indicated in her report, who are involved in the criminal justice system that have a real lack of funds. The REAM grant, if you have a financial need, will pick up the cost of those electronic monitoring needs. We have had that grant in the past. It was handled by the jail. At this point, the jail has indicated that they are unable to do that. So they're looking for a county host to do the grant. The courts could do it, but any funding they get would be distributed over the entire district, and that would dilute our need. And so they continue to look for another entity within the county to host that. Additionally, we discussed Minnesota Department of Corrections is looking for an additional residence. They have one residence in Moorhead where persons who are sentenced or who are in community punishment who otherwise would be homeless can be housed there. They're looking for another residence within the county, and the Department of Corrections would fund that residence. On the 9th, I attended the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon meeting. It was a short meeting, but we discussed current post 9/11 bonuses that are available for those who have served, a $2,000 bonus for Gold Star families. Those are families who, in the post 9/11 era, lost a family member in service. $600 for post 9/11 service medals, people who served in the combat zone, $200 for service during that period. I think you could probably, one of the most expedient things you could do is contact our veteran service officers if you have any questions about eligibility and need some assistance to apply. Also indicated the Moorhead Armory, which has been closed for renovation, should reopen March in 2024, in about a year. And we had a discussion on how the Yellow Ribbon Committee can generate some revenue, fundraising. Later that day, I attended with Commissioner Campbell the Red River Regional Dispatch Center Authority Board. We had a great presentation by Brian Bergstrom with SEH and a couple of folks, one from Architect Design Group, another from KFI, showing the design on the planned dispatch center that we're going to build. We discussed the lease of property from Sanford, which Commissioner Campbell described. Pretty much assured this is being planned for a 20-year need, which is reasonable. I think the best thing, they've got what they need, but they don't have everything they want. And that's pretty much the point you want to be. We want to meet needs. The completion should be the end of next year. In the discussion, it was first put forward to be around June, but the realists in the room intervened and said plan towards the end of next year. Again, the increase in the consoles that Commissioner Campbell described is going to be particularly significant to the county because we're going to be in a position where we're going to be able to have our own designated counsel to where we don't get lost when things get crazy and somebody who's operating our channels gets distracted and has to go over and deal with a crisis situation in one of the other areas. So this is going to be very beneficial to the protection of the people from the Clay County Sheriff's Department in rural Clay County and in areas that don't have a municipal police department. And looking forward to seeing our advance on that. We also did discuss a report from the finance chair, and she indicated the audit went well. And as usual, with the lack of personnel, the funds that have been provided for full-time employees, there's always going to be a little bit of residual funding. So we did have surplus last year. On the 10th, I attended with Commissioner Mojo the Chamber of Commerce Roundtable, which discussed Senate File 2, the paid family and medical leave, that's currently under consideration by the Minnesota legislature. I'm not going to, we've really had a robust discussion in this meeting on this issue. I'm not going to beat the drum too hard, but it very much concerns me, the impact that this will have as a border county. It'll eliminate the desirability of our community to host businesses. It'll cost employees of those businesses, and it'll cost the businesses to pay into this. I know they're putting some money up front to get it started, but we will be creating a state agency of 400 employees that we're going to have to pay for infinitum to maintain this project. And there are already some robust benefits that the county's employees and other employees have that do not serve to exempt us from this need and will not mitigate the cost overall that the state's going to have to operate a new agency within the state government. There's just a lot of things that I think we need to slow down, and there needs to be some time to look at this. As Commissioner Mojo indicated, I don't think any of us think there's any ill intent in this. There's nothing but good intentions in designing this. But the speed in which they're pushing legislation through, the lack of oversight on it is very concerning. Commissioner Mojo presented on behalf of the county and did a good job at the roundtable. Senator Kupek was there. I think he had a chance to hear the concern, not just from the county, but from dozens of businesses that were there. And we had people within our Clay County and our Moorhead community who are major business leaders express that we have viable, serious concerns that need to be addressed, and we don't need to have those bypassed in order to expedite a process, that we need to take time in planning. So I appreciate the fact that the chamber held this meeting, and I appreciate the input we heard, a lot of good input from our community. And that completes my report. Steve?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Last Tuesday, I participated in the highway tracking. Just one thing that of note that I don't believe has been mentioned is City of Moorhead is exploring opportunities for their additional needs for facilities in regards to their highway department. And they're exploring different options, which could also include terminating the agreement of the joint public works facility. And so we did receive some information on that. On the 7th, I talked with Derek LaPointe and Dan Molly on the family and paid medical leave. We talked about some property valuations. That afternoon, I also talked with Eric Dodds in regards to the MCC-JPA ongoing negotiations. On the 8th, Rory Beal and I met with Haley Hillstrom. She's an overdose response strategist from the state of Minnesota. She deals with the challenges counties face with opioids and potential solutions with opioid funds. One of the things that we've identified in the early discussions is our public health having access to the overdose map in Minnesota. And Haley was able to help us with that process. I met with Sheriff Empting, or talked to Sheriff Empting on the 8th and some ongoing issues that they're having in the correctional facility in regards to the attorney-client area. Telephones, there's an existing issue that they've been working through that makes sometimes communicating with the inmates challenging. And so they're working with Accurate Control to try to find a solution there. The 8th, I met with Lynn Valdez, the Deputy Administrator in Otter Tail County. Otter Tail County is inquiring about organizational charts, specifically in regards to public health and social services, and how those services are provided and what the future for Otter Tail may look like. City on the 8th, we did have an additional meeting with the City of Moorhead in regards to their needs in regards to the joint facility. Mike Leeser from the County Attorney's Office was there. Justin Sorum was there, a representative from MnDOT, and also a Deputy or Assistant Administrator Mike Reitz and Anthony Manzella from the City of Moorhead. And so just from the board's recollection, that facility is, the property is jointly owned, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Clay County owns 45% of the building, MnDOT owns 33% of the building, and City of Moorhead owns 22% of the building. So we agreed that we'd have continued discussion on that moving forward. On the 9th, I met with Trenton Gerard from the Clay Cast Land Trust, and also Jenna Cayley in regards to the Rompke Neighborhood Project and Jasmine Child Care Community Space and Affordable Housing Project. The Land Trust is now kind of taking the lead on that potential building project. Then just reported they're still looking for funding for the feasibility study to determine the need and scope of the overall project. On the 13th, I participated, or excuse me, on Friday, I also talked with a rural citizen from Hawley area in regards to asking about any possible additional spaces for outdoor activities within Clay County. Cross-country skiing was one of the things that was mentioned, and also from a high school standpoint, cross-country races, they're finding it challenging now to be able to go onto the golf courses. And so, again, just exploring any possibilities of getting outside specifically during the cold season. On yesterday, I participated in the Finance Committee, which has been addressed. Commissioner Campbell mentioned earlier the initial upfront cost to Caseworks was listed at $157,300. Again, 66% of that would be covered through the state, which would leave $52,382. They participated in the detox substance use owners meeting that's been addressed. The only thing I would mention that I failed to mention earlier, based on the time frame, is from the bidding process, would be coming back before you on March 28th with potential figures to move forward with that project. And lastly, it's good to see Commissioner Gross online today. He is recovering and not feeling up to maybe some meetings this week, and so we do have, I know, 2 meetings for sure. We have PIC that's right after board today, and we also have a building committee meeting that is scheduled later this week on Wednesday, tomorrow at 12:30 to 1:30. And so last week we just kind of touched base on not sure on Commissioner Gross's ability to attend meetings in the short term here, but would explore the opportunity for the board's wishes on adding a second commissioner to those meetings for this week. And I don't know if Commissioner Gross is on. I don't know if he has any other meetings next or this week that he would also like to have covered.
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, certainly we cannot add the knowledge that Commissioner Gross can to these meetings, but certainly can do our part to help with the load for committee assignments. I know today we do have a PIC committee is noted, and so then you're looking for, usually that's chair and past chair, so that would be myself, and then what are you thinking, Dave, since he's doing chair duty?
Well, just, I mean, ultimately, that's up to the board. I think some of the items that are listed on here are items that were on when Commissioner Campbell was on the committee, but I certainly would leave that up to the board's wishes.
Okay. No, I don't know who's available. And then 2, I am not available for the building committee. I think Commissioner Campbell's on that, and then so we'd need somebody if they're available tomorrow.
Yeah, so I have to be here for the meeting after the PIC meeting, so I mean, I could certainly sit on that one as well, and then it would be, we'd probably either need Dave or Paul to come in on the building committee meeting tomorrow. That's at the Government Center at 12:30.
I've got a 12 o'clock meeting, and I think it'd be best if Paul took that building. I can stay for the PIC.
Okay.
If that's, I'm open.
Yes, just one. Some of them are discussions that we've had previously, some of them are new, so it would be up to the.
Everyone's, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then do you have any for next week?
Well, I got to stay here anyway, so I guess it's just from a convenience standpoint, but it does, Just have Dave do it.
All right. Okay, thank you. And then, I don't know, Commissioner Gross, I know that we were planning to be at AMC conference the second part of the week, so I don't know if you had anything on Monday or Tuesday of next week for committee assignments. If you do, let me know if those are things you don't feel like you'll be able to make.
I have nothing scheduled.
Okay, thank you.
Monday's holiday.
Oh, yeah, Monday's holiday. That concludes my report.
Hey, thank you, Steve. Brian, do you have anything?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Jackie? Okay, conclude the meeting.